You want to live in this house? Then get down and eat what she cooked. Get on your knees. I won't say it again.
She only deserves to eat here.
Oh my God, Amara! What did you make my mother do?
My dear friend, before we step into today's story, let your heart settle for a moment. Because some stories aren't just meant to be heard. They're meant to remind us of the people who sacrificed everything for us, especially our mothers. The story you're about to hear isn't about wealth or poverty. It's about a mother's love, the one thing that once lost can never be replaced. And sometimes, just one careless action is enough to shatter a mother's heart. But before we begin, where are you watching from today? Lagos, Abuja, Accra, Nairobi, London, New York? Comment your city so we know where this story has reached your heart. Hit subscribe right now so you don't miss any of the moving African tales coming next. Now, sit back, take a deep breath, and let this story touch the deepest place in your heart. Mama Iredi was the textbook image of a Yoruba mother, a woman who spent her whole life over steaming pots of moi, braving sun and rain to raise her only son, Femi, into a tech engineer, and eventually the CEO of a growing startup in Ikoyi. In her younger days, people along Owilegba Road knew her well. The low wooden table, the aluminum steamer puffing smoke, the smell of ground beans and banana leaves blending in the air. A scent so rich, children passing by always turned their heads. Her hands were rough and calloused, but the muamua she wrapped was soft as silk, bright golden, steaming hot, the breakfast that fed an entire poor neighborhood. Femi, eat quickly and go to school. You have to get off this street, she would repeat every morning, pushing the biggest, most fish-filled portion toward her son, while she herself only ate the crumbs at the bottom of the pot. From those early years, Femi's life was measured in the number of muamua wraps his mother sold. Tuition money came from customers paying in small notes. His new school shoes were bought during rainy seasons when his mother stood selling under a torn nylon sheet, her feet soaked in dirty water, still smiling. "It's fine, I can handle it. As long as you never have to drop out of school." Femi grew up surrounded by steam, beans, oil, and the sweat of his mother's sacrifice. He studied under the shaky yellow bulb of their cramped room, beside piles of banana leaves washed and ready for the next morning. Whenever he earned a good grade, he ran home breathless. "Mama, I'm first in class." Mama Iredi wiped her hands on her apron, hugged him tight, tears slipping down her dark, glistening face. "My son will never stand on the roadside, selling muamua like me. God has heard my prayers." When Femi passed the entrance exam for a prestigious university in Lagos, Mama bought herself a new Ankara dress for the first time in her life. She sat in the back row, not understanding the English coming from the stage, only hearing one thing clearly: Femi Iredi, followed by applause. Her hands pressed together, trembling. Her mind replayed every rainy morning, every time her knees throbbed from standing all day, every night spent picking stray beans off the floor, because tomorrow we have to grind more to sell. All of it felt worth it, for that one name being called. Years later, when Femi became a tech engineer, then landed a job at a big Ikoyi firm, she still didn't understand what technology meant. She only knew her son now worked in a tall glass building with air conditioning, elevators, and people called him a man of the future. "My son works with computers," she proudly told the neighbors, as if she herself invented the smartphone. "I don't know what a computer is, but it must be something big. He comes home so tired he falls asleep on the chair." When Femi opened his own startup, the people who once mocked her, "A muamwa seller's son will only grow up to sell muamwa too," suddenly changed their tone. They called him boss, Oga, a successful man. But Mama still called him my baby. CEO sounded foreign to her. But Femi still eating the muamwa she wrapped, still sitting on the old wooden chair at the porch, still saying, "I miss this smell so much." Those were her true victories. Then, like in many Lagos stories, one day Femi brought home a woman who changed the entire rhythm of the house. Amara arrived like a breeze that smelled of expensive perfume. She stepped out of a shiny car, heels clicking on the stone path. Nails painted wine red, phone screen always lit, hair curled in soft waves, dress hugging her slim figure. Mama tried her best to open her heart. She prepared a tray of mowo, jollof rice, fried plantain, everything she thought city people would like too. She smiled kindly, her voice slightly shaky. Amara, try what Mama made. Femi grew up eating this. Amara tasted a bite, then placed the spoon down, smiling with her lips, but not her eyes. It's good in the traditional way, Mama, but I'm used to eating things a bit more modern. Mama quickly nodded. It's okay, Mama can learn. As long as my son has someone to take good care of him, Mama will eat anything. Their wedding was held in a large Lagos church. Mama Ireti sat in the front row, wearing the finest buba and iro of her life, gel bright gold on her head. She watched her son in a perfect suit, Amara in a dazzling white dress, the lights, the music, people shouting, "Kiss the bride." Her heart overflowed with a simple belief. Finally, my son has a family. I'm old now. I can rest. After the wedding, Femi moved into a small villa in Ikoyi, where streets were cleaner, car horns fewer, and everything felt higher class than the neighborhood he grew up in. A few months later, he returned to bring Mama to live with them. Mama, I don't want you living alone anymore. I can take care of you now. You should be close to me. Mama hesitated. The muddy street, noisy neighbors, laughter from the corner drink stall, that was her life. But she saw her son's joyful face, and she nodded. Where my son lives, that is home. The Ikoyi home was bright and spacious. The kitchen had an electric stove, an oven, a double-door fridge, marble floors. Mama walked in and touched the counter, as if touching something from another world. Cooking mowa here must be fun, she smiled. In the beginning, Amara tried to be polite. She called her Mama sweetly, carried her bags, taught her how to use the TV remote. But soon, small differences emerged, tiny cracks in freshly painted walls. In the mornings, Mama woke at 5 a.m. out of habit, heading to the kitchen to make breakfast. She cooked porridge, fried plantain, sometimes steamed moi in the small bowls she brought from the old house. The first time, Amara walked into the kitchen with her phone in hand, frowning at the aroma. Mama, the smell is a bit strong. This house is sealed, not like the streets. Mama startled. Oh, I'm sorry. Mama will open the window, but I have an online meeting. If the house smells like this, people will think we're living in a canteen. Mama, she laughed lightly, but the phrase smells like a canteen landed in Mama's chest like a stone. Another day, Mama folded the couple's clothes, her hands shaking slightly with age. One of Femi's shirts wasn't perfectly straight. Amara picked it up, shook her head. Mama, we don't fold shirts like this here, too wrinkled. In Ikoyi we iron and hang them, not fold like in the market. Mama bowed her head. Sorry, Mama will do it again. Amara laughed and took a photo, sending it to her friends. Living with village standards in Ikoyi, laughing. Emojis filled the chat, though Mama never saw them. She only heard the giggles from the living room. And Femi's quiet voice. Don't tease Mama, she's sensitive. Gradually, meals in the house changed. No more Mama's jollof. Now it was pasta, salad, steak. Amara hired a professional maid saying, to let Mama rest. It looks bad if people say we make her cook at her age. But no one asked Mama if she wanted to rest. Cooking was her life. Being pushed out of the kitchen felt like being pushed out of existence. Many nights, she quietly cooked a bit of plain rice, a little stew, and set it aside. In case Femi comes home late and hungry, she told herself. One night, Femi returned late, sniffed the air. Oh wow, I miss the smell. Mama made stew? It's been so long. He ate 2 full bowls. unaware that Amara stood outside the kitchen door, arms crossed, staring at the pot as if it were an intruder. After that night, Amara began subtly advising Femi about food, about image, about how houses in Ikoyi can smell like frying oil and onions all the time like the poor neighborhoods. Femi was busy, meetings, contracts, investments weighing on him. He nodded, distracted, missing the small shifts in her tone. Sure, whatever works. As long as Mama is comfortable, he always said, like a thin cloth covering a wound he didn't see forming. But Amara's idea of convenient was actually pushing Mama step by step away from the kitchen, away from the heart of the home, and eventually away from belonging. First came breakfast. "Let the maid cook, Mama. You should relax," she said sweetly but firmly, already placing Mama's pots and pans on the highest shelf. Then came the smell of food. Amara bought overpowering room sprays, spraying the house every time Mama fried anything. "The house should smell like perfume," she explained, "not cooking oil." Then came the dishes. Mama loved her old bowls, chipped but still usable. To her, wasting good things was a sin. Amara saw them and gathered everything into a box. "These look too poor. Mama, I bought you a new shiny set." But when the new bowls arrived, Mama didn't dare touch them. She was afraid of breaking them. Afraid of hearing another comment. Mama isn't used to quality things. So strangely enough, the newer and nicer the house became, the smaller Mama grew inside it, retreating into her own tiny corner, clinging to the few old items she kept like a fading memory. Femi loved his mother, that part was true. He still hugged her after work, still sent money to relatives, still bought her good medicine. But surrounded by emails, deadlines, and meetings, he began missing details that mattered. The way Mama quietly stood up when Amara criticized her food. The way she hesitated handing someone a bowl, unsure of her place. The sighs she let slip when she passed the bright, spotless kitchen. With no bean smell, no banana leaves, no moi steaming for her son. He thought, Mama's just getting old and sensitive. "I'll take her to a church retreat one day and she'll feel better," he reassured himself. But inside that house, behind those white walls and polished floors of Ikoyi, invisible threads were snapping, one by one. And it all began from the smallest things. A bowl called Too Village. A pot of stew labeled not classy. A moi placed in the fridge because it doesn't match our taste. Just one small shift was enough to shatter a mother's heart. Ever since Mama moved in with them for her old age care, Amara mocked her old Ankara clothes, mocked her poor people's food, mocked the way she walked without looking. At first, everything sounded like harmless jokes. "Mama, this Ankara, is it from when Nigeria first got independence or something?" Amara's eyes slid over the faded fabric and she smirked. The mother of a CEO dressing like a moi seller on the street. "People might think our house is running charity for the homeless." She burst into laughter after saying it, her fingers scrolling her phone, not even bothering to look Mama in the eye. Mama forced a smile, smoothing the edges of her blouse. "This blouse. My son bought it for me when he first began working. I wear it so I can remember that day." Yes, memories are nice, Mama. But in Ikoyi, people don't dress like that," Amara replied sweetly, but every word felt like vinegar dripping into Mama's chest. Another day, Mama was in the kitchen cooking a big pot of stew, with a little beef, some dried fish, a pinch of crayfish, everything she knew Femi loved since he was a schoolboy. She stirred carefully, the rich smell filling the spotless marble kitchen. Heels clacked behind her. Amara walked in wearing a tight bodycon dress, phone pressed to her ear. She wrinkled her nose, waving her hand like swatting away smoke. "Mama, this smell. My God, I feel like I'm standing in the middle of Oshodi Market. Not Ikoyi." She ended the call, turned, and leaned against the counter. "I already told you, this house needs to maintain a standard. Stew smell, frying smell. That's the smell of poverty, Mama. People come over and smell this. They'll think the CEO of Ikoe still lives in a street canteen. Mama instinctively stepped back. But Femi likes this stew. Last time Amara cut her off, the smile disappearing. Femi is a businessman now, not a barefoot boy from a poor neighborhood. Mama has to let him live at his level. Mama bit her lip, swallowing something heavy. She finally whispered, "Mama, we'll open the window. Next time I'll make less." But that night, when Femi came home, he still ate 2 full bowls, eyes shining like a child getting back his favorite toy. Outside the door, Amara stood with her arms crossed, silent, her gaze cold as rainwater. Then came the issue of Mama walking without looking. The Ikoe house was huge, with glass panels reflecting sunlight and stone floors, polished until footsteps echoed. Mama, used to dusty earth floors and rough, noisy ground, tried her best to walk softly, but somehow, she was always out of sync. One morning, Amara was filming a video, her life of a CEO's wife, clip for Instagram. She stood in the living room, smiling bright, framed by a white sofa, imported flower vase, Turkish rug. Right then, Mama walked behind her, carrying a broom, small and hunched, accidentally stepping into the frame. Amara instantly stopped recording and snapped around. "Mama, my God, why don't you watch where you walk? I'm recording content for social media. If people see that, they'll think this house has an old maid." Mama jerked in shock, the broom slipping from her hand. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know. Back home I walk anywhere because..." "This is not back home, Mama," Amara said, her voice sharp as ice. "Here, every step has to be presentable. I don't want anyone thinking the CEO's mother looks like a housekeeper." The words hit like an invisible slap. Mama bent down to pick up the broom, her hand shaking. "From now on, Mama, before you walk anywhere, let me know," Amara added, her tone sweetening again. "So I can prepare. This house needs..." "Order." Mama nodded. "Order." From then on, she walked less, stayed in her room more, only stepped outside when she was sure there were no phones recording, no cameras, no image to disturb. Day after day, Amara's words didn't bruise her skin, but they bruised her heart. Poor people's food, village clothes, smell of poverty, walking without looking. Every word Amara dropped was like a needle, too small to kill instantly, but sharp enough to tear a heart over time. And Femi? He was like many Lagos men, caught between the warm, calloused hands of the mother who raised him and the soft, perfumed embrace of a modern city wife. Whenever Mama mentioned a small complaint like, "Amara doesn't like the smell of my food. Maybe I should cook less," Femi would pat her shoulder gently and laugh. "Oh, Mama, my generation is different. Don't take her comments seriously. I still love your food. Next time, cook for me separately, okay?" And he stopped there. He never asked, "What exactly did she say? How did you feel?" He never looked deeper into his mother's fading eyes, where sorrow sat quietly like a cloud refusing to dissolve. He was busy in meetings, busy pitching to investors, busy answering emails from New York and London. Didn't he realize that some things, if you read too busy to notice, will someday be too late to save? Mama understood. She understood the feeling of being a burden. Her whole life, she had trained herself to shrink so the world around her could remain comfortable. So instead of complaining, she adapted. She woke earlier, cooked smaller portions, used the back stove, opened all windows to let the smell escape, washed clothes in the backyard, avoiding Amara's drying line, chose less colorful Ankara, thinking it would make her look less village. But to Amara, every effort was always not enough. One scorching Lagos afternoon, the heat vibrating in the air, Mama sat in the kitchen fanning herself gently with a palm leaf fan. She thought of Femi, remembered the way he used to eat muamwa with his hands, chili on his lips, smiling with his whole face. "He'll be home early today," she murmured. "Let Mama cook him a bowl of hot rice. A little stew, a bit of beef. He said he missed my food. That thought warmed her heart like the charcoal stove under the Mwamwa steamer years ago. She sifted rice, choosing the whitest grains, cut beef, fried onions, poured in tomato puree. The smell rose, rich and red, like sunsets over the old neighborhood's tin roofs. The bowl was ready. White, soft rice, thick red stew on top, pieces of beef arranged neatly. Mama placed the bowl on a tray, wiped the edge clean, and gently carried it to the dining room. Sunlight hit the steaming rice like a tiny blessing from God. Yes, this is good. My son will love it, she whispered. Just then, heels clicked sharply on the stone floor. Amara descended the stairs, dress hugging her figure, hair immaculate like she had just stepped out of a salon. She stopped, her eyes landing on the bowl in Mama's hands. A second of silence passed. Then her lips curved, not in happiness. Mama, what is this? Her voice was so cold, even the silver spoon on the tray seemed to tremble. Rice. I made it for Femi, he said. Mama, you cooked this. For Femi? Amara raised an eyebrow. White rice and red stew. It looks like food from a roadside buka. Mama froze, the smile on her lips collapsing. But he grew up eating this. He said he missed it. Amara laughed loud, echoing across the spacious room. Oh my God, Mama. Imagine if his partners or clients walk in and see the CEO eating poor people's food. They'll record it and post it online. CEO of Ikoyi still eating village food. Can you imagine the embarrassment? She stepped forward, every step like driving another nail into the floor. Mama, I told you. This house needs an image. This kind of food belongs in memories, not on the dining table in Ikoyi. Mama opened her mouth, wanting to explain, but her words got trapped in her throat. Let me clean this up, Amara said, already reaching for the bowl. Mama, please, let it stay until Femi. But Amara didn't wait. She snatched the bowl from Mama's hands. The ceramic clacked loudly against the tray. A few grains of rice scattered onto the floor, rolling like baby teeth falling from a child's mouth. Mama instinctively reached out, but it was too late. The young wife, elegant in her expensive dress, walked straight toward the bathroom, heels striking the floor in cold, deliberate beats. Mama stood frozen, hands still outstretched, like a statue abandoned movement. Amara, what are you doing? Her voice cracked, barely audible. I'm just throwing away the trash, Mama, Amara replied, without turning back. The bathroom door opened. Darkness waited inside. Amara's silhouette disappeared through it. A few seconds later, only one sound echoed through the house, sharp, merciless, ripping apart the illusion of elegance and peace the home pretended to have. The sound of the meal she cooked being dumped straight into the toilet. The door opened. Femi walked in, exhausted after a tense meeting. His tie was loose, the top two buttons of his shirt undone, the laptop on his shoulder feeling like yet another stone he had to carry through the day. The car's air conditioning had just shut off. The late afternoon Lagos heat rushed in, mixing with the faint trace of cologne he de-sprayed that morning, now nothing more than the scent of tiredness. He nudged off his leather shoes and stepped past the doorway, fingers reaching up to his suit buttons out of habit. His mind was still tangled up in numbers, timelines, and an investor's words. We need to see growth. Not just a touching story about the poor neighborhood you grew up in. He had smiled, answered with his usual confident CEO tone. But now, with the front door closed behind him, that armor fell away, leaving only Femi, the son of the woman who once stood in the rain selling Wamwa so he could have this life. He took a deep breath. The house was strangely quiet. Usually at this time, Mama would be in the kitchen, one hand on the ladle, the other wiping sweat from her forehead, calling out, Femi, are you eating today? Mama made fresh stew. And Amara would be in the living room or on the stairs, chatting on the phone, her laughter ringing through the house like glass chimes. But tonight, Femi heard no spoon tapping a pot, Smelled no fried onions, no hot oil, no red stew, the scent of his childhood. There was only one sound coming from the end of the hallway. Glug, glug, glug. The sound of water swirling, then the sharp metallic rush of a toilet flushing, like someone flicking a nerve in his brain. Right after that came laughter. Not the easy, loose laughter you let out at a funny story on the radio, but short, dry, sharp laughter, like shards of glass scraping together. Femi froze in the hallway. A strange chill crawled down his spine, colder than the heat outside was hot. He set his laptop down on the bench near the door, not bothering to take off his suit jacket. His hand tightened around the handle, then let go. His heartbeat quickened, not because of pitch decks or deadlines, but because of a very old feeling, the one he had as a child when he ran home and didn't see Mama in the kitchen where she always should be. Mom? He wanted to call out, but the words stuck in his throat. The toilet stopped flushing, heavy, final. A short, thick silence followed. Then he heard high heels clicking on the stone floor, a rhythm he could recognize in a crowd. Amara. He walked toward the back of the house, each step heavier than the last. The hallway was lined with polished stone, paintings hanging on both sides, European-style wall lamps casting a warm, golden glow. Everything was exactly on brand for the Ikoyi CEO image he'd built. But under that warm light, something was wrong. The air was dense with the harsh, chemical smell of bathroom cleaner, mixed with another scent he knew very well but hadn't fully registered yet. When he turned the corner, the sight in front of him hit like a punch to the chest. Amara stood by the bathroom door, one hand on the frame, the other on her hip. Her dress hugged her body, her curled hair resting perfectly on her shoulders. She tilted one foot, using the tip of her high heel to press the toilet lever again, like it was a game. In that brief moment when the water spun, Femi saw it. Mama's ceramic bowl. The one she always used. Inside, the red smear of stew. A few grains of white rice swirling in dirty water, spinning around, being dragged down, like memories being deliberately erased. The rush of toilet water was loud, sharp, and cold enough to slice through every other sound in the house. Mama was leaning against the opposite wall, her body folded into itself until she looked half her size. Her wrinkled hand gripped the edge of the wall, knuckles pale. Her eyes were red, the edges wet, as if she'd fought back tears, afraid to cause trouble. Femi went still. For a few seconds, time shattered into pieces. One piece was the bowl of rice. One piece was Mama's trembling hand. One piece was Amara's crooked little smile. And one piece was the memory of a small boy sitting by a dusty roadside, eating pieces of moi his mother handed him, savoring every bite like it was food for a king. The smell he finally recognized, tomatoes cooked with peppers, with onions, with beef, was now drowned under the harsh scent of toilet cleaner. On one side, childhood. On the other, the luxury image someone said he had to live up to. He could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. Thump, thump, like church drums on a Sunday service. "Oh, you're home early," Amara said, turning to him, her voice light as if nothing had happened. "I was just cleaning up a little." "The house has to stay tidy, right?" The word cleaning floated out of her mouth, soft as foam, but stabbed into Femi's ears like steel. He looked at her. Then at the toilet, where little soap bubbles still bobbed on the surface of the freshly flushed water. In his mind, another image flashed. Mama at the old house, washing cheap ceramic bowls by hand under a leaky tap, murmuring prayers. "God, please let my son have enough to eat every day." He swallowed, his throat desert dry. What just happened? Femi had never heard his own voice sound like that before, low, hoarse, and almost unfamiliar, as if it belonged to someone else. His eyes dropped to Amara's shoes, still resting on the toilet lever. The tendons on the top of her foot stood out beneath smooth skin. No hesitation, no regret. He turned, and his eyes met Mama's. In them was a whole ocean held back. Shame, pain, self-blame, and fear. The fear of an old woman realizing she might be a burden in her own child's home. "Mom," Femi wanted to say, but another question rose faster, hotter, like iron pulled straight from the fire. The toilet's water had gone still. The house was quiet again, but it was the kind of silence that follows lightning. His chest felt tight, like if he didn't speak, he would explode. "Amara, what are you doing?" Femi's voice cracked. "I was teaching your mother a lesson." Amara swung her hand, her red nails flashing under the bathroom lights like tiny streaks of blood. "This house is not a place for poor people to bring their filthy village food into." The words, "poor people, village food," hit the white tile floor like stones thrown into still water, splashing filth onto all three people standing there. Femi's ears rang. He stared at Amara as if she were a complete stranger. The woman he married, the woman he protected, the woman he brought into this home, was now standing in front of the toilet that had just swallowed the bowl of food his mother made, speaking about poor people as if she were describing mold on a wall. He turned to Mama. "Mom," his voice cracked. "How long has this been happening?" Mama flinched, like someone shaken awake from a nightmare she had been trying to get used to. She shook her head, her lips twisting into a broken smile, the kind she used every time she tried to reassure her son. "It's just, Mama wanted to cook for you. It's nothing, my son. Mama only disturbed your house a little." She bent down, trying to pick up something from the floor, but there was nothing left to pick up. Only an old cloth in her hand, now stained by the dirty water splashed on it, leaving a brown-gray mark. Her wrinkled hands were blotched red from heat and age, trembling hard. Femi saw everything. He grabbed her wrist and felt the coldness of her skin, a cold that did not belong to a woman who had spent her whole life standing over hot steam and open fire. "Mom," he tightened his hold, afraid that if he let go, she might disappear into the wall behind her. "It's all right," Mama said again, for the second time, eyes drifting away. "It's just that Mama is not used to this way of living. Mama did things wrong. Your wife only reminded me a little." "Reminded?" Femi's voice sank low, dangerous. "A reminder is throwing my mother's food into the toilet and flushing it with your foot?" The air in the bathroom thickened, choking. Amara planted a hand on her hip and laughed, a brittle laugh, like glass tapping glass. "Don't exaggerate everything. It was just a bowl of rice. One bowl. Do you know how much this house costs? Do you know who you invite to eat here? Partners, investors, internationals. And your mother keeps cooking those poverty meals and putting them on the table like we're running a roadside buka." She pointed toward the kitchen as if presenting evidence of a crime. "I'm teaching your mother that this is not a slum. This is Ikoyi. Do you want to protect your image or do you want people filming? CEO eats poor people food cooked by his village mother and posting it online?" A wave of heat surged through Femi's chest, rising up his throat. He remembered the nights he came home late, saw a small pot of stew on the stove, Mama sitting quietly in the corner asking, "Did you eat today?" He remembered eating a few hurried bites while tired, unaware of the eyes watching him with hope. He'd thought it was just love. He didn't know the price behind every pot of stew, the insults, the scolding, the pushing out from the kitchen that had once been her world. He swallowed hard. "Mom," he said, eyes locked on her, "is this the first time Amara has done this?" Mama was silent. Her forced smile faded, like a watercolor painting smeared by rain. She looked at the floor. A streak of dirty water was still on her leg, leading all the way to the toilet. Clearly, she had tried to stop Amara, tried to save the bowl, before it was tossed like trash. "Tell me the truth, Mom." Mama gripped the cloth tighter, fingers digging into the fabric. "My son, Mama doesn't want to worry you. You already work too hard. Things in the house. Let the two of you handle." "Mom!" Femi's voice cracked like a whip. "Is this the first time Amara has disrespected you like this?" Mama's eyes filled as if someone twisted open a valve inside. "No," she whispered, voice barely sound. But they were only words. Mama can endure. People have different views. Mama is from the village, I know that. See? Amara cut in, waving her hand. Even your mother admits it. I'm just helping her update herself for this level of life. You can to be a CEO of the future while your mother is stuck in the past. The last sentence came out sharp as a blade. The entire house went still. The ceiling fan, the AC, the cars outside. Everything fell silent until the only sound left was Femi's heartbeat thundering in his ears. He looked at Mama. She was so small she nearly disappeared into the wall. Her sun-darkened hands trembled in his. Her cloth, the one she had tried to use to wipe away her humiliation, still dripping with toilet water. Two images overlapped in Femi's head. Mama beside a steaming mwah-mwah pot in a dusty alley, sweat on her cheeks, calling, "Femi, eat so you can go to school." And Mama here, staring at the toilet bowl that had swallowed her food. Something cracked inside him, not patience. Not the role of husband or CEO, but the illusion that he could stand between his mother and this woman. There was no between anymore. Amara. His voice tore through the house. Not the voice of the calm executive who spoke smoothly in boardrooms, but the voice of the little boy who once stood in the rain gripping his mother's hand, shouting at a shopkeeper who refused to sell to her on credit. I was poor. He stepped forward, eyes burning. She fed me with the same food you just flushed down that toilet. His shout ricocheted off the walls, the tiles, the mirrors, shaking the house that used to pride itself on elegance. Mama jerked, tears spilling, finally unable to hold them back. She had never heard her son yell like this, not for money, not for business, not for pride, but for a bowl of rice she cooked. Amara stepped back, not out of fear, but out of shock. She wasn't expecting this. She was used to the soft, reasonable Femi who always compromised to keep the peace. But this man, eyes red, hands trembling from anger, voice cracking with heartbreak, was someone she had never met. You're yelling over a bowl of rice? She scoffed weakly, but her voice faltered midway. Femi didn't answer. He only tightened his grip on Mama's hand, a declaration to the whole house, to the gleaming toilet that had devoured her work, to the woman who thought she could erase his past. Some things can be thrown away. But some things, if he allowed anyone to trample, he would no longer be himself. Amara tried to defend herself, her voice forcing the calm that was already beginning to tremble. I just want the house to look more classy. Your mother, enough. Femi cut her off. His shout sliced through the suffocating air in the gleaming bathroom like a knife. The sound bounced off the white tiles, the mirror, the dripping from the shower head. For the first time since their wedding day, Amara fell silent. Femi took a deep breath, as if trying to push the rising anger back down his throat. He turned around, his expensive suit jacket sitting crooked, his tie completely loose, but he didn't bother fixing them. In that moment, he wasn't the CEO of a praised startup. He was just a son standing in a bathroom, face to face with the two most important women in his life, realizing he had allowed one of them to have her heart crushed. Right inside the house that bore his name, without saying another word to Amara, Femi suddenly dropped to his knees. He knelt right there on the bathroom floor, where dirty water still shimmered faintly, where just moments before his mother's rice had swirled and disappeared. His knees hit the tile. The fabric of his expensive pants bunched, pressing into the hard, cold ground. He lifted his head and looked straight at Mama. She froze, confused. All her life, she had been the one to kneel, before the altar at church, by hospital beds praying her son would survive a fever, outside creditors' doors asking for just one more week. She had never once imagined that one day her son would kneel before her. The strong hands of a grown man reached up and took her wrinkled, aged hands. Mom! Femi began, his voice shattering like glass hitting the floor. I'm sorry. He drew in a deep breath. The next word seemed stuck in his chest, dragged out piece by piece. I let you live in fear, in my own house. The word my landed heavy. This was his house, in his name, bought with his money. He chose it, furnished it, selected every polished surface inside. He was the one who brought her here with the promise. You'll be taken care of. You'll get to rest. But now, looking at her hand clinging to the wall, the dirty wet cloth in her grip, her dodging eyes, he realized every spotless wall, every shining tile, every warm yellow light had become a witness to his mother's silent fear. Mama tried to pull her hands back, but Femi held on. No, Mom, let me finish. Don't pull away from me. His eyes were bloodshot, veins visible along his neck. I thought, as long as I made enough money, gave you a better house, better medicine, better hospitals, that I'd done my duty as a son. I believed that, so I closed my eyes to the small things. That weren't small to you at all. He swallowed, memories hitting like knives. Mama has to cook less. My daughter-in-law doesn't like the smell. Mama will walk slower. I don't want to ruin your image. I'm old. I can live, however, as long as you two are happy. Back then, he had laughed them off, thinking they were just cute sacrifices of a loving mother. Now he saw each sentence for what it really was, a red flag. And he had stepped over every single one without stopping. Mom, his voice dropped lower. I should have seen it sooner. The first time Amara dared to call your food poor people's food, I should have stopped her. The first time she mocked your blouse, I should have said, that's the blouse I bought my mother with my very first paycheck. But I stayed quiet. I let the words pass. Like they weren't important enough for me to speak up. He let out a bitter, broken laugh. I'm sharp with investors. I defend my plans in front of the board. I argue with competitors in the market. But I didn't have enough courage to defend my own mother. In front of my own wife. Mama's chest rose and fell. My son, she whispered, I don't blame you. I just didn't want you stuck between two women. I'm old. You have to think of your future, your wife's future. But if the price of that future is my mother being humiliated like this. Femi glanced toward the toilet, where the water was clear again, but still smelled sharply of chemicals. Then that is not a future, Mom. That's a betrayal with a fancy address. A heavy silence settled. Amara leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed tightly over her chest, jaw clenched. She wanted to say, you're going too far, or I didn't mean it like that. Or remind him that his parents were too poor to understand the world he lived in now. But every version of that sentence, no matter how she twisted it, was still another knife. And this room already had enough blood. She heard her own words echo back at her. This house is not a place for poor people to bring their filthy village food into. When she said it, she'd felt powerful, like she was setting boundaries. Now, watching the man she once bragged about kneel in front of his mother, she realized some words once released can never be taken back. They hang in the air, sink into the walls, into the floor, into the memory of everyone who heard them. Even if the speaker later says, I didn't mean it like that, the cut is already there. Mama looked down at her son kneeling before her, and her heart clenched. Femi, get up. You're a man, the head of the house. How can you be kneeling on a bathroom floor like this? If people saw you, they'd laugh at you. Let them laugh. Femi shook his head, gripping her hands tighter. If anyone should feel ashamed today, it's me. I'm the one who let you be humiliated in my house. A drop of water fell onto the back of Mama's hand. She thought it was from his hair, but then a second drop landed. Then a third. They were warm. Femi was crying. The last time she'd seen him cry was when he was 10, the day his father died in a truck accident on the highway. After that, Femi learned to bite his lip, swallow tears, and be a man like the other men in the neighborhood. Endure, stay silent, push through. Now this same man, with a whole company, with hundreds of employees, was letting his tears fall like a child at his mother's feet. Mom, His voice cracked. If I could go back, I wish I had paid more attention to you, noticed every small change in your eyes, every time you stayed quiet longer than usual. But I can't go back. I only have one thing left I can do. To make sure not even one more day passes with you being afraid in my house. Mama wanted to say, I'm not afraid, but she knew that would be a lie. She had been afraid. Afraid of being a burden. Afraid of being called village, outdated, not classy enough. Afraid of making her son choose. Afraid every time Amara's heels clicked down the hall. Afraid of the smell of her own cooking. Afraid it would be judged as not worthy of this house. She had lived with that fear silently, every single day, not daring to tell anyone, not even God, because she felt ashamed of her own pain. And now, right before her eyes, her son saw it. He saw the wet cloth, the shaking hands, the missing bowl, the invisible cracks inside her. Mom, I'm sorry. Femi repeated like a prayer. I promise you, you will never again have to bow your head in this house. Not for anyone. Not even for my wife. Mama tried to steady herself, tried to smile, tried to say, it's okay, my son. This will pass. But the words wouldn't come out. Something else came first, a choked sob, then another. And another. Her shoulders began to shake. The hand he held squeezed tighter, clinging to him like the only life raft in a raging river. Her old eyelashes, hardened by years of road dust and kitchen smoke, could no longer hold back the flood. Tears spilled over, running down the deep lines in her face, gathering at her trembling lips. Mama broke down and cried. It wasn't the quiet, humiliated crying she'd done into her pillow at night, while listening to the couple laugh in the living room. It wasn't the crying of a poor woman feeling out of place in a rich home. It was the crying of a mother who, after all this time, was finally truly seen by her child. Femi stood up. His legs felt twice as heavy as he pushed them off the cold tile. His knees still throbbed, but that pain was nothing compared to what was rising in his chest. He turned to Amara. When he spoke, his voice sounded strangely calm. But under that calm was a thin sheet of ice covering molten lava. Amara, he said, each word landing clearly, I've put up with a lot. A lot. He glanced toward the living room, as if seeing through the walls, reliving every time she snapped at the housekeeper, wrinkled her nose at the smell of stew, or smirked when Mama accidentally dropped a glass. I've put up with you loving luxury, loving image, wanting to live like those CEO wives on Instagram. His hand curled into a fist, knuckles turning white. I've put up with you calling my English cheap, calling my thinking village, even when you told me to cut back on sending money to my family so we could focus on the future. I stayed quiet because I told myself it was generational difference, different backgrounds. He paused, eyes locking with hers. But anyone who disrespects my mother, the woman who gave birth to me, cannot stay in this house. The bathroom seemed to shrink. The smooth walls, the big mirror, the warm halogen lights, all lost their elegance and became the walls of a box packed tight with air ready to explode. Amara froze, her lips parting, but no words came out for several seconds. You, she finally managed, then swallowed hard. You're kicking me out? The word kicking echoed in the air, crashing right back into her own ears, sounding so brutal that she immediately pushed back. Are you insane, Femi? Her voice suddenly shot up. This house is ours. I'm your wife. Without me, you wouldn't have the image you do today. All those events, all those times I stood next to you, all the branding I did for you, you forgot that? She stepped toward him, her heels striking the tile like stomps of punctuation. Over a bowl of rice. You want to push me out of your life? Femi didn't move. His gaze was so steady it unnerved her. There was no more explosive rage, no more pulsing veins. Just a cold certainty, the kind that comes from a decision made deep inside, with no way back. It's not about a bowl of rice, he replied. It's about the way you looked at my mother like trash. The way you used the words poor people in the very house paid for by the calloused hands you re-insulting. The way you stepped on my memories and called it teaching a lesson. He jerked his chin toward the toilet. You didn't just throw food away. You threw away the last bit of respect I had left for you. Amara let out a low, bitter laugh, a mixture of hurt and pride. And what about me? She jabbed a finger into her own chest. Do you know how much I gave up to be with you? My friends laughed at me for marrying some new money Ikoyi guy. My parents said I was crazy to marry a man who grew up in the slums. But I still chose you. And now you stand there and tell me, I don't respect your roots? She lifted her chin. You talk pretty, Femi, but be honest. If you'd kept clinging to that poor background of yours, would you even be where you are today? Femi was quiet. For a moment, he could see his old self, the version of him who would have heard those words and chosen to swallow them, chosen to pretend nothing happened, to promise Mama next time and tell himself, I have to balance, I have to be flexible. But that moment passed, just like the rice that had just gone down the toilet. Amara, he said slowly, clearly, I will always remember the good things you did. I won't deny them. But every event, every suit, every photo spread means nothing if they're standing on top of my mother's humiliation. He inhaled, then delivered the sentence like a verdict. A person who doesn't respect the roots cannot build a family. Not with me. The air shattered. Inside Amara's head, his words replayed over and over, like someone had hit the repeat button. Doesn't respect the roots, cannot build a family. So that's your choice, she said softly, her voice suddenly lower. You choose your mother and throw away your wife. Femi shook his head. I choose what's right. If you had respected my mother, you wouldn't have put me in a position where I had to choose. Something flickered in Amara's eyes, maybe regret, maybe pain, maybe just wounded pride. But it flashed and disappeared, like everything else in the fast, glossy life she had crafted for herself. She straightened her back. Fine, she said, pressing out each word. You want me gone? I'll go. Ikoyi is not short on successful men. It was her last line of defense, sharp, toxic, and desperately trying not to sound broken. She turned. Her heels hammered down the hallway, each step like an angry exclamation mark. As she passed Mama, she didn't look at her. Mama's eyes followed her quietly, full of pain, worry, and a strange lightness. Lightness because her son had finally stood by her. Pain because she was watching a marriage she had prayed over countless nights, rip apart in front of her. Amara, Mama called out, her voice shaking. The younger woman paused for half a second, turned around, eyes red, but chin held high. Mama, please don't say anything right now, Femi said in a low voice. You don't have to ask for anything on my behalf. Mama shook her head. I'm not asking for you, she whispered. I'm asking for the family. She looked at Amara, old eyes blurred with tears. Daughter, if one day you have a son, you'll understand a mother's heart. Every mother is afraid of being a burden. Every mother is afraid of being pushed out of her child's heart. Don't be the kind of woman who makes a mother feel that way. Amara's fingers tightened around her handbag strap, nails digging into her own skin. For a moment, the cold mask on her face cracked, just a sliver. She bit her lip, holding Mama's gaze a little longer, then turned away. I wasn't raised to be that kind of mother. I was raised to never be poor again. That was the last thing she said. She walked into the bedroom. The sounds came, zippers, hangers clattering, drawers opening, clothes whipped from the closet. The house filled with the chaos of a small storm packing itself up. Femi leaned against the wall, feeling both lighter and as if someone had reached into his chest and yanked out a piece of flesh. After all, she was still the woman he once loved. The woman he'd called his wife, the person he'd imagined building a long future with. But some things, once shattered, can't be glued back together with good memories. especially when the shards are buried in his mother's heart. A moment later, Amara rolled her suitcase out. The suitcase left a long line across the floor, its wheels rolling over the same tiles she'd proudly filmed that very morning for a young CEO home tour video. She stopped at the door. "You'll regret this," she said, not turning around. "The whole world respects you because you're a CEO. You're the only one walking backward." Clinging to your poor past. Femi didn't respond right away. He looked at her back, still holding Mama's hand. He knew that if he opened his mouth to argue, to score points, he might say things he'd regret later. And he was already exhausted from regret. In the end, he spoke just one sentence, low, steady, not loud, but landing like nails in the air. "If I have to choose between being respected by the world and not betraying the woman who gave me life, I choose the second." The words fell. No one answered. Amara turned the doorknob. Slam! The door slammed behind her, the sound echoing through the hallway, bouncing off every wall, slipping into every room. Her heels clacked farther and farther away outside, each strike on the stone sounding like the final hammer on the coffin of a marriage. Then silence. A silence completely different from any other night. No more high-pitched laughter from the living room. No more heavy perfume layered over air freshener. Just the sound of two people breathing, one old, one young, standing together in a bathroom. Femi turned back toward the toilet. In that small circle of water, he saw his whole life. The alleyway, the smell of mamois, his mother's street vendor calls. And Ikoyi boardrooms, investor pitches, his own mind chanting, up, up, up. He squeezed Mama's hand gently, then spoke softly, like a promise and a new beginning. "I let one person walk out today, Mom. But I will never let you be the one who has to leave this house again." That night, Mama Iredi sat in the kitchen under the soft glow of a yellow bulb that lit up her age-lined face. Her shadow fell against the cream-colored wall, small but steady, like the trunk of an old tree that had survived dozens of Lagos rainy seasons. The kitchen was strangely quiet. No more sharp clicking of high heels. No more bursts of perfume trying to overpower the smell of food. Just the ticking of the wall clock and the faint whisper of the night breeze slipping through the small window. On the table, the pots Mama hadn't dared to touch for a long time sat perfectly clean. But cold. She reached out and brushed her fingers along a stainless steel handle, like she was touching an old friend she'd avoided for far too long. "It's been so long," she murmured, almost to herself, "since I stood here and cooked a real meal." Her throat tightened. She used to think that at this age, she'd finally get to rest. No more waking at 5 a.m. to light the stove. No more standing under rain and sun, selling wamwa by the roadside. But the rest Amara gave her had not been peace. It had been emptiness. The feeling of being put away in a corner like an old object, taken out only when someone needed a touching backstory to brag about. While Mama sat there, Femi leaned in the doorway, silently watching her. He'd changed clothes, no suit jacket, no tie. Now he looked more like the college kid he once was in a cramped, cheap hostel than the celebrated CEO on magazine covers. His shirt sleeves were rolled up high, his arms strong but trembling a little. "Mom," he called softly. Mama turned. Her eyes were still a bit red, but calmer now. "My son," she answered, forcing a small smile. "Aren't you going to rest? You've had such a long day." Femi stepped into the kitchen, his sneakers making almost no sound against the tile. "I'd rather be tired like this," he said, heading straight for the fridge. He opened it, pulled out tomatoes, onions, peppers, and beef. He opened the rice container, scooped some into a pot. His movements were clumsy, like playing a song he'd once known by heart, but hadn't touched in years. Mama watched, so surprised she forgot to blink. "Femi, what are you doing?" He turned, the corner of his mouth lifting into a smile that was both warm and sad. He drew in a breath. "I'm going to cook the rice and stew you used to make. But this time, you sit." I'll stand at the stove. Mama let out a laugh, the sound tangled with the softest hint of a sob. My son, those hands. She shook her head. They're only used to typing and signing contracts. Don't burn your fancy kitchen down, This kitchen has been cold for too long, Mom, Femi replied. If it has to burn a little, that's still better than it staying cold. He chopped onions, and the sting of it brought tears to his eyes. Mama reached for a cloth. Let me cut those. You're not used to this. Your eyes. You've cried too much because of me already, Femi said gently, pushing her hand back down. If anyone's eyes should burn from onions this time, it should be mine. He smiled, but his hands were still shaking. Mama propped her chin in her hand, watching her son's clumsy movements. He chopped the onions into big, uneven chunks, sliced the tomatoes crooked, poured in a bit too much oil. She clicked her tongue. No, that's wasting oil. Let me. Mom, Femi turned back to her, his eyes soft. You guide me, I'll do it. Tonight, I want to learn again. From the very place my life really started. Mama sighed, but in that sigh, there was warmth. All right, she said, her voice slow and gentle, like the steam rising from a pot. First, don't be scared of hot oil. You've dealt with investors worse than any frying pan. Femi laughed, a real laugh, more honest than any polished chuckle he'd put on in a boardroom. Mama showed him how to saute the onions until they were fragrant, how to wait for the tomatoes to cook down so there was no raw smell, how to add pepper, spices, and beef at the right time so the meat wouldn't turn tough. Every instruction came with a memory. I remember when you were 6, you insisted I put in more pepper, remember? You ate until your eyes and nose were running, but you kept saying, I'm fine, Mom. I knew you just didn't want to waste the mwah I gave you. I remember. The first time I gave you money to take to school. You spent it all on books instead of food. You came home so hungry you nearly fainted. From that day, I promised myself, my child would never have to go hungry again. Femi stirred the stew and listened, his heart squeezed tighter every time she started with, I remember. He realized something. Well, he remembered dates, the year he got into university, the year he got hired, the year he launched his company. Mama remembered tiny things. The time he sweated from eating too spicy. The time he skipped lunch to buy books. The time he fell asleep on the table from studying too hard. Finally, the stew thickened, turning a shiny red-orange under the kitchen light. The smell filled the house, slipping into every corner, pushing out the harsh chemical scent of bathroom cleaner like pushing a ghost out the door. The rice finished cooking, steam rising like morning fog over old tin roofs back in the neighborhood he grew up in. Femi turned off the stove and scooped rice into a bowl. Not one of the brand-new white dishes from that Image Perfect set, but an old slightly chipped bowl Mama had insisted on keeping even when someone wanted to throw it away. He set the bowl on the small wooden table and pulled a chair out. Then he turned, held a hand out to her. Mom, can I eat with you tonight? Such a simple question, but to Mama it sounded like a miracle. For weeks her meals had mostly been reheated leftovers, eaten alone in the kitchen after the main meal was served to the couple and their guests. She'd grown used to hearing laughter in the living room while she quietly ate beside the sink. Now her son, the man Lagos called a brilliant young CEO, was asking her with the voice of a 10-year-old boy after school, Mom, can I eat with you? Her smile trembled, but it was brighter than it had been in a very long time. My son. She nodded, eyes shimmering. That's what I'd been waiting for, all month. They sat down. No fancy tablecloth. No wine, no candles, no elaborate dessert. Just white rice, red stew, 2 spoons, 2 plates, and 2 hearts that had wandered very far from that old neighborhood, now finding their way back to this small kitchen table. Femi took a spoonful of rice, poured stew over it, and lifted it to his mouth. The heat, the spice, the salt, the richness crashed over his tongue like an old song suddenly playing again in the dark. He closed his eyes. For a split second, he wasn't in Ikoyi anymore. He was back in that tiny kitchen, rain rattling the tin roof. Mama standing at the steam-filled pot, hand on a fan, hair still black, skin firm, smiling even with sweat dripping down her neck. He saw himself as a boy, bare feet, shorts, sitting on a low stool, tearing into steaming hot mowa. He saw his father still alive, laughing loudly, saying, "Our boy is getting out of this place, just watch." He saw Mama nod, her eyes shining with belief. He opened his eyes again. In front of him sat the Mama of today, hair silver, back slightly bent, but her eyes still the same, strong, gentle, holding an entire sky of hope she had poured into him. "Mom," Femi said softly, "I promise you, from today on, no one will ever use the word poor as an insult in this house again. No one will ever call your food filthy village food in this home. If anyone even tries, they won't belong to this family." Mama set her spoon down and looked deep into his eyes. "Femi," she said, voice low but soft like the night breeze, "a poor person isn't the one with little money in their pocket. It's the one with little love in their heart. I've always been poor in money, but I've never been poor in love for you." She laid her hand lightly over his. "You can't choose where you were born, but you can choose how you treat that place. Someone with money who forgets their roots, forgets the person who held them when they were just a naked baby, that person isn't rich. They're just wearing rich like a costume." Femi swallowed another spoonful of rice, feeling his throat burn. "Tomorrow," he said, "I'm going to tell my company and the press. If they ask this, I didn't to become successful because I came from a fancy background. I'm here because of a mother who sold my moi. I'm done letting people use my past as something to mock. And I'm done letting anyone turn you into a shadow in my own house." Mama smiled this time. The smile didn't shake. "My son, you became successful the moment you knelt in front of me today, not the day the newspapers printed your photo." Outside, Lagos kept roaring, honking horns, music from a bar somewhere, voices arguing in the heat, generators rumbling in the distance. The city always rushed, always pushed people to climb higher, move faster, go up, up, up. But in that small kitchen of the Ikoyi house that night, two people weren't going up or down. They were simply going back, back to a simple meal, back to the way Mom was said, not out of duty, but out of love. Back to a place where a mother didn't feel like a guest in her own son's home. And the story closed with a lesson every Nigerian family understands: rich or poor, village or city, whoever forgets their roots loses themselves. Whoever looks down on the one who raised them loses everything. Because in a world where money comes and goes, houses are bought and sold, and reputations rise and fall, a mother's love is the one thing that once you trample on it, you can never buy back. My dear friend, after all the hurt, the words that can never be taken back, and the tears that fell onto that cold bathroom floor, we learned something deeply important. In this life, you can build a new house, but you can never build a new mother. You can choose a wife, choose friends, but you cannot choose the woman who raised you with sacrifice and a love that never runs dry. In Nigeria, we say, "A tree that forgets its roots will fall." If we forget the hands that fed us, forget the simple meals our mothers cooked with pure love, then we lose ourselves long before we lose anyone else. Remember, don't let anyone call your mother's cooking poor people's food. Don't let anyone make your mother feel afraid inside your own home. And never let success blind your eyes from seeing your roots. Before you leave this video, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Lagos, Abuja, Accra, Nairobi, London, New York? Comment your city. Let's see where this story has touched hearts across the world. And if today's story made you think, made you miss your mother, or made your heart slow down for just a moment, hit subscribe right now. Tap like so YouTube knows you want more stories like this. Share this video with someone as a gentle reminder. Never let your mother shed tears because of your silence. Thank you for giving your precious time to listen. See you in the next African Tales, stories not just to hear, but to live, to remember, and to grow from.